back Dark Star. I can play back Dark Star, at least that version, note for note in my head like a mantra. John Muir said that when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And it was at the ACM Computer Conference in 1990 when I first met John Perry Barlow. He was on a virtual reality panel with some luminaries like Esther Dyson, Jaron Lanier, and Timothy Leary. And they're going on and on about their $1 million VR rigs. And Barlow pipes in and says, but for $5, I can get a hit of acid and have VR. That was the moment I decided it was safe to come out as a psychedelic evangelist. And so in 1989, I was one of Steve Jobs' first developers for the NeXT computer, and I'd written some apps for the NeXT drawing and database. And Barlow was just sort of coming off the ranch and dipping in via the well. That was his connection back to his friends in San Francisco. And he became a journalist for a magazine called Next World. And so one day I get a call. This is John Barlow. I'm from Next World, and I want to interview Andrew Stone. And I go, John Perry Barlow? And he is overjoyed that I know who he is and that we're both deadheads. And we just we became very fast friends. And as Steve Jobs had kind of moved into this ultra straight Armani suit, get government contracts model, he had like totally left behind everything that we loved about the Mac, which was, this is the hippies' tool, and this was going to save the world. And so Barlow and I basically made it our mission to reintroduce psychedelics to the software world. And so in 1992, at the Palace of Fine Arts, Bobby was there, we had a acid test, and we continued doing that year after year for 92, 93, and 94. And it was fun to see the guys from the CIA wondering what the hell was going on. So many perks about being John's friends is he would comp my wife and me backstage passes and tickets. And I remember the last show I saw with Jerry was at McNichols Stadium, Denver, in December 1st, 1994. And I had made a preparation, as Barlow liked to call sacred medicine, of what I call bioregional ayahuasca. And that would be Pegamum harmala and Psilocybe cubensis. In other words, Syrian rue and mushrooms actually create an ayahuasca effect. Anyway, space and drums, I'm looking around the auditorium and I see shafts of light coming out of everybody's crown chakra. And at that moment, my grandfather, who was from Kentucky, had died a few years earlier, but he came to me that night and he said, young brave, I am passing you the torch. And I'm like, holy shit. Nonplussed, mystified, the whole thing, but very grateful. And then, although people think that the psychedelic research began at Johns Hopkins in the aughts, it actually started right here in New Mexico in the early 1990s with a researcher, Dr. Rick Strassman. And he had gotten a license from the DEA to perform human psychedelic research for the first time in 20 years. Now the problem was it was IV DMT, so he needed volunteers who were quite experienced. And so luckily I passed that test. And during one high dose session, when the creator, Hashem, whatever, talked to me directly, the message was, this can't just be, this has to be, people have to know about this stuff. It's really critical. And so Rick was just going to write a scientific paper and in there. But I convinced Barlow to ask the boys and the Rex Foundation if they would help me fund a stipend or honorarium for Rick to be able to take off a few months to write a book. And that's the genesis of the Spirit Molecule book. Now that book became a movie about 5 or 10 years later, and it became the most downloaded documentary of all time at Netflix. So, more dead grooviness.
Is it still on Netflix?
And anyway, Dr. Strassman and I formed the Cottonwood Research Foundation to keep studying this amazing endogenously produced chemical, dimethyltryptamine. And Rick's very shy, and one day when somebody called and wanted to talk about his psychedelic experience, Rick said, call Andrew. So I'm out irrigating in my field one day, and my wife comes out with my phone because I left it inside, and she says, there's a guy with a really thick southern accent that wants to talk to you. And I go, hello? And he goes, hello. This is in 2013, by the way. This is Sturgill Simpson. And he says, I'm from Kentucky. And I say, I always have time for a Kentucky man. And so I sat and we talked about the experience and how transformative it was and how there really are angels and whatnot. And then he goes, Andrew, they tell me that if I release these songs, my career in Nashville will be over. And I'll be done for. And by this time, because my grandfather's from Kentucky, I kind of code switch into my southern drawl and twang. And I go, now Sturgill? Haven't you heard of the slowest rising rock and roll band of all time, the Grateful Dead? It was due to the ubiquitousness and the notoriousness of psychedelics that have created this phenomena. So please go ahead. And anyway, 6 months later, I get a CD in the mail, and it's Metamodern Sounds and Country Music. And in the liner notes, at the very end, it goes, special thanks to Francis Crick, Terence McKenna, Aldous Huxley, Carl Sagan, Stephen Hawking, Rick Strassman, and Andrew Stone. I'm dumbstruck to see my name with the list of heroes. And I was reminded that our most valuable gift is our attention that we give each other and how extraordinary things can come to pass because we were there to be present and listen to and offer reflection. So I thank you for your attention. But when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the Grateful Dead universe. So each of us here and across this bright blue ball, whose souls have been called to be a golden thread in the Grateful Dead family tapestry, are together weaving the unbroken chain and carrying the torch. I leave you with what Mickey said. If mercy was a business, I wish it for you. May you have more than ashes when your dreams come true.